Hi again, it's Jason from Fraser Valley Rose Farm. I'm back with my Rose Care Month by Month series, this one for February, and this is the exciting month. All those things that I've been saying hold off on. Don't feed your roses, don't prune your roses. It's not time yet to plant your roses. Well, now is the time in my climate. Now, I would have made this video a couple of weeks ago as we went into February, but as you can see, we've been snowed upon. It's actually been winter weather, and that's actually a good point, is that you have to make these calls based on your local weather. Here, usually it is around February 14th. That's what the growers have always told me, where you start to make that decision and the risks of deep cold start to diminish, and you can actually start pruning roses in your garden. So as always, I'm going to go through the main topics. I'll put those on the screen right now with timestamps as to when I'm going to deal with them, but we've got lots to cover today, so let's get to it. And just by the way, if you were wondering why I have this inverted pot in the garden, let's cover that real quick because I'm actually uncovering my roses or unprotecting them. I actually put this in place because I have some small roses in the garden that I was worried about over the winter blast that came through. We had some deep negative temperatures, at least for our climate, in the range of -10 Celsius. I'll convert that to Fahrenheit on the screen. And a little rose like this with little tiny thin canes can be vulnerable to that level of cold. So I covered it up with this pot. I put a stone on top of it, let the snow accumulate around it, and that kept it away from that deep cold wind, which can desiccate out the stems. So it was just a minor protection measure. We don't normally need such things in my climate, but because this was a small and young rose, I felt it was warranted. Moving into the main activities section of the video, I know I mentioned that we could go ahead and start on your planting because of course the soil temperatures are moving in the right direction, but I'm going to hold that off. I'm going to push that to the March video, which will be in just a couple of weeks, because by that time I'll have both bare root and potted roses on hand that I can do a demonstration for, and really pruning is a big topic, so let's deal with that now. So I think we want to start with a couple of the bigger questions. Number one question is, why would you want to prune your roses, your established roses, at this time of year? Why is this so good? The second question that we're going to do when we get closer in on the plant is, what are you trying to accomplish? So the question of why, let's return to that one and say the reason why, and it's the same reason why you see orchard people going out and pruning their apples at this time of year or their fruit trees, is because now is the time before the plant has expended a whole bunch of energy on trying to develop and send out new leaves. Those leaves, once they come out, are going to obstruct your vision, your view of what's happened to the plant. So right now, while the stems are bare, before the plant has put a lot of energy into growing for the season, is a great time to see what it needs. So that's why I do it this time of year. I could wait until it leaves out. These are reblooming plants, so for the most part, so I could wait until later and get them throughout the season, but right now gives me a great opportunity, and it works into my workflow where I can get out, have a good look at the plant, do the major structural pruning now, and send it into the season clean. So yes, I do love having the leaves off, but you can see that even with all the leaves off, there's a lot of stems here, a lot to think about when you're trying to prune this. So I try to break down my question of what I want to do with the rose into two basic areas. The first one is, what am I doing for the health of the plant? And the second one is, what am I doing for the shape and size? So you can see these stems here that are pushing out into the archway, into the wrong area. That's a shape and size issue. So I'm going to put that on the back burner, and let's talk first about health. And I'm going to get us way down deep in here. I'm going to look at some of the health issues. Here's a health issue I can focus in on. You can see how that stem there is split along the center, and I have no idea whether that happened over the winter or whether it happened during last season, but I can see it now, so I'll have to get rid of that. Here's another one I'm going to point at here. You see how this larger stem has a bit of a canker on it. It's kind of going in an unattractive direction too, but I'm going to take care of that and get rid of it. In fact, I do want to look and review always at some of the larger, older stems at the base of the plant and see if any of them are justifying removal, because removing those big stems will encourage the rose to refresh its growth. So I can take care of those first and then deal with shape and size issues afterwards. And here's a quick look at the ones I've removed so far. You can see that one's got a bit of a canker on it. That's that split one we looked at. Canker, this one was dead all the way from the base. Another abrasion or canker on the stem, another one. So all of these are just older stems that made it very easy for me to make the decision on whether to remove. Okay, I hope to make short work of this because I have lots more to do. This one just because it's extending too far past the support. These ones here, the question is, can I train them back? And maybe it's true for some of them, but some of them are just going too far out. So I'm going to get rid of them right now and just do it in short order. This one here, giving it a bend, and yes, I can bring it back behind there. Just to decongest the center here, I go ahead and take this one out. That way it's not interfering with the other ones around it. All right, let's see what else we can do here. I think this one here is also too tight with another stem, so I'll get that out of the way. And this one here is too small and thin and wispy and growing into the center. All right, this is kind of useless. Over here, let's just see what else we can do to decongest the center of this shrub. I'm going to get rid of this right here. Probably could have tackled that with larger loppers, but this was the tool that was in my hand. Okay, that can go out of the way. I suspect I can train this up against here, so I'm good with that. This here is going the wrong way. This I can train back, so no problem. Okay, what else we got here? These two kind of go in the same direction, but I can train this against the far end. Get that out of the center. Getting close, getting close. I see this one here is coming way too far out this way, and I don't think I have any chance of really training it back. So pull that out of the way, and there we go. And this last one, tough judgment call, but it just is, I think, too far away from the support to really be useful in the long run. So off it goes. So here's the finished job on that rose. You can see that work I did at the beginning, removing those older, crustier, grosser, older stems at the base, made it a lot easier to thin out at the top. And now I have just a few key stems that are younger, healthier, and I'm making the judgment call that these are trainable up against the support. So overall, big improvement, and it started by removing some of the oldest, crustiest stems. Well, that was one example, a big climbing rose, but this one is much smaller, much younger, and I would even say in better overall health. So how am I going to make some decisions on thinning this one at the base? But that's exactly where I'm going to start. Start from the base of the plant, look at the stems, pick some winners and some losers, even if they're all in better condition, to thin out the shrub so that I can then train for shape and size. And as we get in close up here, it is also striking to me that this one was right behind the house where it's got a little shelter from that winter wind. And you can see while the other one was almost completely defoliated by winter weather, this one's still holding on to some of its leaves. And I do want to clean those up, both on the plant and you can see down in the litter below it, a lot of those rose leaves are still hanging out below the plant. And if it had any problems at all with black spot or powdery mildew, and let's face it, this one was actually a fairly healthy plant, but if it had any inoculum of those foliar diseases, those may be hanging around at the base there. Now looking in at the base there, I do want to make a distinction between some of the younger, fresher stems and some of the older, crustier stems, and I'll reach in there and show you this one here has kind of a funny look to it. It's a bit off to the side there. It looks like it is an older one, and I do want to remove that one as a starting point, and I want to choose a couple of the other ones here to thin out because I do want to refresh the growth at the base. And the plant will react typically to this kind of treatment by sending fresh new shoots from the ground, and I hope you can see there that right at the base it is in fact doing that right now. Already this season starting to send fresh new growth from the base, and that's what we want to encourage. Okay, so here I am getting right down low in the garden, and I'm going to take off this one here. I can tell by these side spurs here down low that this is a bit older. Also, the color of the bark is a little bit darker. Was it particularly any better than this one or worse than this one? Maybe not. It was just in a slightly different position, and so it's nice to clean it out from the center there. I think it still calls for a little more thinning, so I'm going to get rid of this one here. And, you know, I'm going to get rid of this one here as well. With some of these smaller ones out of the way as well. Now I can see that I have, you know, in the range of 6 or 8 decent, nicely spaced stems right at the base. And so now I will do the shape and size. Now on the matter of shape and size for this one here, this is Earth Angel. And in my garden, so far, it has turned out to be a little bit vertical. So I actually do want to take some height off of this. I'm going to bring it down. This might be the highest I go. So what's that? That's probably a little over 2 feet in height. And then it also gives me a good chance, because I've picked that height, to get rid of a lot of the foliage that is above that level. Because I really don't want that foliage persisting on the plant. So I'm going to go ahead and just pick a height right around there. Get these out of the way. That one's tangled into a clematis. And it is, yeah, it's all under 2 feet roughly. And that's a pretty reasonable pruning. Now, of course, that got rid of all of the leaves that are on the shrub. I still need to take care of what's on the ground. And there's your look at the final result in a little more of a close-up way. Moving on now to the video section on fertilizer and soil, I'm going to go ahead and apply alfalfa to the base of this plant. And I've got a scoop measure inside here. I'm just giving it one good scoop. And you know, the actual size of the measure is not critical, a cup or a little more than a cup. And in fact, on a big shrub like this, the climber that I worked on first, I'm probably going ahead with 2 of them and then working it slightly into the soil. Now, I've done a whole other video on why I like alfalfa so much as a sustainable and soil improving fertilizer. So you can go here and look at that. But I will also say at this point that anything that is organic at this point would fit the bill. If we're talking about cow or steer manure, rabbit pellets, whatever it is that goes in here that breaks down and improves the soil structure and texture over time, that's what I'm looking for, and it feeds the plants at the same time. Now, let's move on to watering, just while we're on this, because we talk about fertilizer and soil. Water is something that comes up in my videos regularly, and usually I'm talking about watering the plants. In this case, I'm talking about watering in the pellets. Now, in this region here, we have very, very moist soil at this time of year, but if you are in a drier region, you're working these pellets into the soil, it does benefit you to give them a watering at the same time, either a quick soak before you apply them or a watering directly after you apply them. If you don't, in some drier climates, they will either just sit there unbroken down as a pellet, or they'll form a bit of a crust on the surface of the soil. So working them in and watering them in is a great help to getting them to break down quicker. Now, the amount of this, as I say, about a cup is about right for this, or for a medium-sized shrub. 2 cups is fine for a larger shrub. And I'm going to be repeating that application throughout the season, every 6 weeks or so. So on subsequent videos, you'll see me doing the same thing. Moving on to the propagation section of the video, the question I'm going to answer, the sole question I'm going to answer is, can you propagate from the stems that you just cut off while pruning? The answer to this is a qualified yes. I get asked this all the time because people feel like it's wasteful. Well, of course, the qualification is that those older, crustier, grosser stems from the base of the plant are no good for this. They're never going to yield you any positive results. But the younger stems that you trimmed off for size and shape towards the top may be useful in that regard. Now, the method you're going to be using is hardwood propagation, and that's a slow method that requires you to have cool soil temperatures at the time you stick them, and soil temperatures are still quite cool right now. It's going to take them a long time, 6 months probably, to root. And when you're looking at a stem like this one here, again, fully hardened off stem, it's quite stiff. What you're trying to stick away from really is this top tip here, and I don't know if you can see on the sample here, but these very large buds that are starting to express, it almost looks like they're starting to want to grow. Those will probably be too early, so you're looking for stuff that's further down the stem like this, where it's a little bit harder. You're still cutting below a node and above a node for a section that looks like this, something like this, in the range of 6 to 8 inches long, that will be sticking mostly under the soil, and then hopefully they will stay dormant for a while they develop some callus and some roots across the base. You'll be dipping it in a high strength rooting hormone to try to encourage that process. I'll give you an example of the bed where I'm doing that right now. Now on to the section about pests and disease, and this is my most aggressive treatment of the year, and it starts with me getting pretty meticulous about stripping off the dead leaves that have fallen across the base of this plant. You remember this one here had dropped a lot of dead rose leaves down low, and I just want to clean them out of there so that they don't have that inoculum, those spores spread back to the rose for this year. So getting those out of there is important. And once you've got a pretty clean job of what's down low, gotten rid of those leaves, then I want to go ahead with a spray. Now this is a spray, in my case, of lime sulfur. This is a dormant spray, and what you spray in your climate, in your area, may vary. This has kind of a stinky, rotten egg smell to it. It's pretty strong, and it's mixed at a much higher rate than you would use during the active season, because it's meant to get rid of the pests and disease, or the ones that are dormant on those stems. So getting a really good coverage, I missed some leaves across the base here, but getting some really good coverage on those bare stems from all angles is a pretty good measure on this. This is an example of the one I'm using. Now the reason I say mine is lime sulfur, your dormant spray may vary. So in your jurisdiction, you may have to use something different. It's all what's allowed under the law. And so I'm not going to go into the specifics of this particular spray, except to say that what you might be using is copper-based or oil-based, but the idea is still the same. You're trying to get it while the stems are dormant pretty heavily and at a much higher rate than you would try at a different time of year. Now with that soil along the base as clean as I can get it, I did not apply my alfalfa previously because I didn't want to mix it up with all those leaves I would be removing. So now I'm going to go ahead and apply my alfalfa, work it just gently into the ground. This is the point where in a drier climate you might be watering this in. And then what I'm going to do is one final step to try to stave off those spores, is I'm going to go ahead and apply myself a thick mulch of composted or composting tree bark. So this is chipped tree bark, and I'm going to apply that all the way around, all sides, to try to create a barrier between the spores that might be on the soil surface and might want to jump back up to those stems. All right, that is the video for February. I went through my main activity, which of course is pruning at this point. We got the go on that. We'll be keep on going in that for the next couple of months. Our feeding, we have the alfalfa or whatever other organic amendment you want to add. Water that in. In terms of pest and disease control, we're focusing on the big cleanup and tidy this time of year, especially on your more susceptible varieties, those that you come down with black spot or powdery mildew throughout the year. At this time of the video, I always give you a highlight of a plant, and this one I'm standing right beside. This is called Darlow's Enigma. People sometimes ask me what is my favorite rose for wildlife, and even though I love wild roses, the wild roses that we get in this climate here tend to have a very short bloom period. This one here has the same wide open blooms, but it blooms from the beginning of spring all the way through to the last thing in fall. Excellent for wildlife, for bees, for pollinators, even has the little hips at the end of it. So this is a fantastic plant. Wonderfully fragrant, and is really just the most likely thing to be in bloom in my garden at any given time. So Darlow's Enigma is my choice to highlight this month. All right, thanks so much for watching. Catch up with you in a couple of weeks for March, and at that point I'll be happy to answer any additional questions you have on pruning, maybe give you another example, and we'll talk about planting as well.